better than usual? Are you having a nice time in Islington, camera? Are you the sort of camera that did that kind of work? Are you the other sort of camera, a camera that only sees? Like I am a camera, like John Van Druten.
In 1970, a Victorian pub was rebuilt from top to bottom, and its back room, which had been used for cockfighting in the 17th century and prize fighting in the 20th, was converted into a theatre. The King's Head became the first pub theatre since pre-Shakespearean times, and its founder, one of England's longest-serving artistic directors of off-West End theatre, is Dan Crawford.
The King's Head was my first acting job in England, so I'm very, very grateful and in debt for that. Otherwise I'd not be sitting here in this palace that I now live in.
I think the King's Head puts a kind of button in your career. It fixes you.
It is a good place to play.
I think it'd be nice if it stayed up.
Passion makes him tick. Completely individual approach makes him tick. Great things make him tick.
He doesn't curry favour, he doesn't lick arse, he doesn't schmooze, he doesn't even look after his teeth. But there's something about him which is purer than all the others, you know, the other steel-cut teeth and arse lickers, and that's what I like.
"35 years later, this tiny powerhouse has launched countless household names in exceptional productions of new drama, musicals, and classic revivals, many of which have won awards and transferred to the West End. On a minuscule charitable grant from the government, the intimate setting of the King's Head Theatre has become a treasure chest for unique work and the discovery of extraordinary talent.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all very, very much indeed. And we're very, very lucky tonight that it's not raining. I'm born in Hackensack, New Jersey, which is a fairly indifferent suburb of New York. Cole Porter wrote a song in which he referred to Hackensack, rhymed with never go back.
He came here, he worked as a plasterer on the building sites to get enough money to get this place. His dream was a pub theatre.
We'd never had any sort of dinner theatre in England, but it's a long-standing American tradition, and I think Dan simply wanted to introduce it to England.
I'll find a pub, I'll put a theatre in. I also noticed that a lot of Victorian pubs had function rooms. I thought, well, this is perfect. I mean, to use one of these function rooms as a theatre would be ideal.
The building was really dilapidated when he moved in 30 years ago, I think now, or a bit more. And, you know, it hadn't really been anything since King Henry VIII had used it as his watering hole on the way to his mistress. He lived round the corner over there somewhere. Oh no, maybe that way.
He came over here, as is fairly widely known from the States. We owe an enormous amount to American visitors, I think. Sam Wanamaker came here to look for the Shakespeare Globe and in fact had to build it because it didn't exist. Dan also came here looking for a pub theatre and found there wasn't one and basically went around Islington looking for a suitable space.
I mean, I understand, as you said, his vibrancy and his passion and his, oh, you're there, come and see me, I've got this wonderful idea. But what I find hard to understand is, he's done it for over 30 years.
What good is melody? What good is music?
Now, passion and commitment, I hope I've got that in spades. But I have my lulls. I've never seen Dan have a lull. Every production is a 5-0 victory to Dan. Does he still do the 2 and 6 for the drinks? Is that still there?
£1 8 shillings, please.
I cannot believe that's still there. Without the pound, shillings and pence, there would be no millions, and without the Dan Crawford, there definitely would have been a poorer West End.
Well, when I came up to the King's Head in 1970, I'd been told by people where I lived, just off the Fulham Road, that Islington was up and coming. So I thought, well, might as well come up. And I did. I came up to see what was going on. And I went to each pub from the Angel up to here and said, I hear you're on the market. I got here and the chap behind the bar said, on the market? Get me out of here. I've been temporarily managing this place for nearly a year. It's driving me crazy. It's like solitary confinement. So I thought, very good. So I called an estate agent the next day. The estate agent called the brewery, and the brewery said, well, nobody else wants it. Might as well give it to you on a punt. And they did.
I mean, I think the art of running a pub is very close to running a theatre. You've got to be there. You've got to know the guests by name. Interestingly, you don't see it very much now in the West End. Theatre managers don't really know their customers. But I think that in a curious way, the great theatre managers have always known precisely who the audience is. And that's what Dan knows. He knows the customers, he knows what they want, he knows who they are. And that is why the King's Head works.
You need a very strong individual personality, which is something that, you couldn't say of virtually any other. I can't think of another theatre that's been going for that long where one person's been the name that you would connect.
Day one of auditions for Women Laughing by Michael Wall, directed by Dan Crawford.
Very nice. Your character, Maddie, is at her wit's end to know what to do with and or about her husband. We must see someone who on the surface actually just lets life flow by.
Okay. He has this really shiny excitement. There's akin to the energy of a 10-year-old. So, like when he was offering me the job and saying, hooray, great, fantastic, rather than any more measured sense. I mean, he then, by the way, when he turned around, he said, great, it's yours, and then turned to walk away, and then turned around and said, if you want it, that is, which was obviously unnecessary.
Hello? Hello, Dan Crawford. Hello, how are you? We've never met, but I've admired your work on stage enormously. I think you're absolutely terrific, one of the best actors in the country. Yes.
And the tremendous thing about Dan is the thoroughness of his casting. He will work and work and work to get the best possible cast. There's, as you probably know, there's a directory called Spotlight that has every actor in it. I mean, now it's volumes and volumes. It's like Encyclopedia Britannica now. And he'd go through every single page, always looking for somebody. Well, what about him? Don't know about him? Let's see him, shall we? He looks interesting. So he was giving fantastic opportunities to people.
Well, I think the first thing is casting, actually. And what do you do to get the right cast? Well, the thing is to make sure you've got the right cast. And you do that by not giving up.
Working here was like the first professional job I'd ever done. So in that way, it was a huge stepping stone for me coming here. And the fact that it wasn't scarily institutional like the RSC or like even the West End theatres are, it was such a relief and such an easy thing for me. It really, I was very terribly nervous and terrified. But the atmosphere of this place, for me, really helped me.
Three on a Couch was a success in my eyes for many reasons, but mostly because there was this man, Dan Crawford, sort of at the head saying, you guys can do it, trust yourselves. Get rid of the doubt. You're about to go on stage. That's the most crippling thing that you can have. And he says it with this go out there and do it. You can, and he walks in and you just think, oh my God, that was the shot in the arm I needed.
We fall into this place, somehow, like when we're down and out, like the bum falling into Rowton House, a home for the homeless.
In order to make it in this business, you really have to understand all aspects of it. And that's another part of his genius. He doesn't just do one thing, he does everything. You're lucky if he agrees to light your show. Many shows that come through the King's Head he doesn't light. But, if he agrees to light your show, then he literally wants to create the look for each scene and each act and then each scene himself, very specifically. He loves to climb the ladder and hang from the rafters and shift these lights around until he gets the effect that he wants. I don't know of another theater owner anywhere who would do something like that, but that's what he does. So by the time he gets the show up and on the stage, the look of it is exactly the way he wants it to be.
One approaches a play in such a way that one needs to make every moment work in the play to achieve something interesting, entertaining, amusing, moving, or relevant in every single moment of the play. If it's not any of those, it should be cut. And that's why plays need to be cut, because they have an awful lot of moments quite often that are none of the above. So that really is the objective, to make each scene work and then have the whole, towards an aim, towards a final objective. I mean, one knows one needs to progress from A to B to C to D to F to G. But in order to do that, one must make the scenes work as well. Very, very important to be playing in the right place at the right time. Actors play parts, and they do play parts, and that is actually is the right phrase. They are not the whole play, they are a part of the play. And it's very important that they play the part and not the whole. And that's something that one works on in rehearsal, to make sure that the actors are in the right place in the play as well as everything else.
Day one of rehearsals for Women Laughing.
Now, which is a bit about the play. The play is basically a comedy. It goes into all sorts of other areas, but it comes back to the fact that it is a comedy and needs to be played as a comedy all the way through. You are all very gifted comics, as well as being very gifted performers. And it's that gift that one wants to apply most of all.
In terms of finding plays and getting plays up here, you're always trying to find the gags, you try to find the laughter. Laughter is very important to you.
Yes. Laughter is absolutely essential. And laughter is more important in a tragedy than in a comedy.
If you look at one thing that I think only Dan could have found, it would have had to be Mr. Cinders, which, you know, he unearthed. Everyone had forgotten about Vivian Ellis.
There's a danger zone.
He struck up a relationship with Vivian, which was almost like father-son relationship. It was wonderful. To watch the two together was fantastic.
Dan asked me to do this musical called Mr. Cinders, which is a 1930s piece. It was a massive success.
Every fearsome animal that creeps or crawls or bites.
So we had 16 people, and not only that, we had piles of costumes, and costume changes galore. About half the cast changed here in this room where we are now. They then went down the stairs, climbed across the roof into the dressing room.
Dennis Lawson, and that was a discovery. And there it went into Fortune Theatre, where it ran for 2 years.
Noel and Gertie was obviously the story of Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence. We had our first ever London run at the King's Head. We then took it all around the world. Twiggy played it on Broadway for 6 months. And it's been entirely because of the King's Head that we got that show going.
And Sheridan Morley, who he and I claim each other as sort of distant cousins. We're not really, but we've got cousins who are cousins, so we say we're family. And he sent me a letter saying, as family member, I think you should come and do this play. And I said, okay, where's it?
The morning after we opened, Dan rang me up and said, now look, you better come and have a look at this because you won't see it again. There is a queue for tickets that goes right down from the King's Head box office as far as the cinema on Islington Green. And it's people buying tickets.
I think our greatest coup was doing Rattigan's The Browning version. It had fallen into disrepute as a play. Rattigan himself had fallen into disrepute because when the new wave came at the Royal Court with Look Back in Anger and kitchen sink drama, he was seen to be incredibly old-fashioned, incredibly middle-class. And we managed to get Nigel Stock and several other people in, really first-rate actors. And we set about re-establishing Rattigan's reputation. Everyone said, you're mad, it's a sentimental, rubbishy old piece. But it was devastating. People were sobbing.
The Browning version, it was quite magically painful.
Terence Rattigan came to the opening here and sat sipping his brandy, more or less in tears from start to finish.